Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 637. Today we're going to talk about Monolith Arena. This is a new game coming out from Portal Games. And if you've ever played Hiroshima Hex, which came out about 10 years ago or so, this is very much like that game, but set in a fantasy-style universe. Hiroshima Hex was more of a post-apocalyptic universe, and this is fantasy, so you've got dwarves, demons, and elves, and the human race, and all that kind of stuff. So it's a very interesting tile laying battle game. So it's almost like you're playing a skirmish game, or even like a skirmish miniature game in a way. We're sort of kind of protractedly setting up the battles and then fighting them very, very quickly. So if you've seen my review of Hiroshima Hex, my views haven't really changed since then, but I will jump in and let's take a look at how it works. As kind of a refresher, there is a new kind of mechanic to it, hence the monolith portion of the title, but then I'll come back and give you what I think. Okay, here you can see just about everything that you get in the box. The main thing to note, of course, here in the middle is this central board, and you also have 4 factions that come in the game. You can see the blue faction, the humans, we've got the dwarves over there, and then also the demons in red up there, and the elves back over here in kind of green. So you get a individual sort of asymmetric stack of tiles for each of the different factions. You also get kind of a starting base for each of the factions, and that's going to be the first thing that players will do once you decide who goes first. Each player will put their base out, and they can put this anywhere that they want. You could even be adjacent to the other player's base if you chose. And you also might get some extra tokens for special abilities that particular faction has. For example, you can see a bunch of poison markers up here for the demon player. You've also got some other bits here for tracking wounds and so on, some multiplayer markers. It is a 2 to 4 player game. I've not played it with more than 2. One interesting bit is in Hiroshima Hex, you had kind of a bigger board for playing multiplayer games, but there's no increase in the board size here. I have played Hiroshima Hex with 3. I don't think I ever played it with 4, but I have played it with 3, and I definitely prefer that game and probably this game as a straight 2-player game. Now the other things that you get, you're going to get these monoliths here, and these are these little kind of plastic trays that you're always going to have 3 of. And if you wish, there's kind of like an advanced mode, although I expect that's kind of the way the game is meant to be played. You don't have to play them with these. At the start of the game, you can take 2 tiles of your choice out of your deck, let's call it your deck, and then put those underneath here in the bottom, and then you put your base on top, and then instead of placing just your base, you'll place the monolith like so, but we'll talk more about that in a second. And then the other thing you have, which is awesome, is you get these player aids for each of the different factions. So let's just look at the demon one here. These have a really cool finish on them. It's kind of like a linen type of thing, and it's kind of glossy. You can't really tell that. Okay, so it gives you kind of a breakdown of the faction, and then on the back side, it gives you a breakdown of all the different tiles. So it's a very quick and easy reference. The basic rules are pretty straightforward, but then you're going to get some variation, of course, in the different special abilities and special tiles of each of the different factions. So these are really cool to have handy. So the game works over a series of turns, and you're either going to play through your decks, and then once one set of tiles runs out, you'll have kind of a final battle. Or the game can end when one of the player's bases has their hit points, which start at 20, has them all the way go down to 0, and then of course the other player will win the game. So that's the 2 ways that it will end. And I couldn't really tell you which one ends more often than the other. I've seen plenty of games end where somebody gets to 0, or plenty of games where both players will go, or one of the players will go through the deck, and then you look at where the hit points are, and whoever has the most hit points will be the winner, of course. Now all the turns are going to play out the same except for the first 2 turns. So whoever goes first, let's say it was the blue player, on their very first turn, they're going to take and draw just 1 tile. And they can either choose to discard this tile, play the tile, or just keep the tile. And then the other player, the second player, is going to draw 2, and it's the same idea. They can either discard, keep, or play these tiles. Then from there on out, you're going to draw up to 3 tiles. So let's say the first player kept his first tile, and then he would then draw up to 3. And then at this point, out of the 3 tiles that you get, you always have to discard 1 out of the game, and then you can play or keep these others, but you could also discard them if you want, and then you draw up to 3 at the beginning of your next turn. Now these tiles are face up, so if you decide to maybe play this tile and discard this tile, then you keep this one for a later turn. Your opponent knows which tile you're keeping, so that might be a little bit of a tell, or you could use it to actually bluff if you wish. Now there are 3 basic tiles, and you can see the three types of tiles here. Now the main tile that you're going to be dealing with are these unit tiles here, and you'll be placing these out onto the board and then positioning them in a certain way. Now there's a couple of things to note about this tile. As you can see, it's going to attack in these different directions. So if I put this here next to their base, it's going to be attacking their base and then also these other directions, but nothing behind him. Now the other type of tile here, well, let's keep him here like that. And so let's say in a future turn, we played this tile. Now this is an order tile. So you have this kind of scroll here with a little icon. There's a few of these. And this one in particular will allow you to move to an empty adjacent spot, and then you can reorient as well when you move like that. So you've got here the units, and then you have here the orders. And then you have these rune tiles here. And you can see these are runes because they're on kind of a stone. And these are going to do a whole bunch of different things. This one is unique to the human players, but let's just put it out here, and I'll explain a little bit more what it does in a minute. But a better example might be this one here. We can see we can put that out, and it's got three kind of little tunnels towards other tiles. So if I put that here, that's going to then increase anybody around, any friendly unit around its attack by 1. So this guy will, instead of doing 1 attack in those directions, it'll do 2 attack and so on. Whereas if we had this fella here, you can see he's got a couple of features on it, which we'll talk about. But if we put him there like that, then this would be increasing his attack from 2 to 3. Now the other features here is, you can see he's got comes with 2 attack. He has armor around his front end, which means it's going to eat up 1 range damage. So you can see these swords here are going to be only damaging adjacent tiles like so. Whereas this symbol here, you can see it's instead of a sword, it's kind of a flame symbol. This is a range symbol. So if we put this guy here, what this is going to do is going to do 1 damage because it's got the 1 symbol to the first enemy unit in that line there. So in this case, it would hit the base because there's nobody else. But if there was another unit, or even let's say a rune, here, let's say this rune, so it would do damage to that rune, and then it would go away. Now, like I was showing you before, some of these units here, these are called champions, I should say. I shouldn't call them units. They have some special abilities kind of built in. So he has the move feature built in. So one thing you can do on your turn, in addition to playing and discarding the tiles, is you can activate some of the features of the tiles out on the board. So if I wanted to say activate the move feature, I could do the move like that. He also has here this extra armor, which is sort of like an extra hit point. Usually 1 damage is enough to kill the units, but if they have the armor, then they'll be able to absorb a damage, and you'll mark it with a token like that. And then they also here have the some of the human units actually have this cavalry ability, the ability to charge like that. So I showed you this charge rune earlier. So one of the things that I could activate here is if I've got this rune out, you've got one of them in your deck here, you can activate that, and then so anything that has a charge can do that. And what a charge is you have to move into an empty space, and then you can orient how you want, and then you can attack. So in this case, I might say, okay, I'm going to activate the charge. He's going to move, charge, and then he's going to zap that, and then he'll do 2 damage to that. We'll mark that down like so. Now the other way that you can charge, let's say you didn't have this rune, you hadn't drawn it yet or something, you could then play this tile here. So the humans have this ability. They can either do an attack, which everybody's got a bunch of attacks, but the human ones have the attack with the charge. So if I didn't have this out, I can then play this for the charge ability. You have to choose. Then I can do the charge as well, and again, do the 2 damage. Now you're going to keep playing tiles like this till either the board fills up. As soon as somebody puts a tile on the last spot, you're going to have an attack. Or if somebody plays an attack tile, in this case, I didn't play it for the charge, I played it for the attack, then you're going to activate everybody and do all the attack. So what happens when you do an attack, either from playing the tile or filling up the board, is everything is going to sort of like attack simultaneously. So you kind of think everything is in slow motion, kind of positioning and jockeying around, and then bam, then you have kind of the outcome of it. So let's just throw out some tiles here, and I'll kind of resolve attacks. And the one thing you're going to notice here is everything's going to be based on this initiative here. So all these different champion units have an initiative. It's kind of an order that they operate in. Okay, so I put some tiles out, and let's pretend one of the players here played an attack tile. We're going to resolve the attack. So we're going to resolve it in descending initiative order. So right now, the highest initiative order that we have here is this guy here. You can see he has a 3. But if we take a look at this tile here, this is actually going to buff up the initiative of any adjacent friendly unit. So these are actually 3. And the game comes with these little tokens here like that. So as you sort of put stuff out, you can keep track of the initiative so it's not too confusing. And another common thing you can see is you'll get these web tokens here. So let's just pretend, for argument's sake, that the human player had played this. This allows them to place their special web token. There are others that you can get, other units that will sort of web adjacent units. But let's say they played this here on this guy right there. So when you web a unit, it kind of like takes it out. It's not going to do any attacking or anything like that. And it basically shuts that tile off. So if we're going to resolve this here, we're going to go look at all the highest numbers. So we've got a 3, a 3, and a 3. And these 3 things are going to all happen simultaneously. So let's just do it in this order. So the 3 here, he's going to do a ranged attack. So he's going to hit the first one here. And what this is doing, this is actually rewarding an extra kind of a hit point. It's called a Ruin of Regeneration. So it would actually save this one from getting shot by this one. But since these are happening simultaneously, it's still going to happen. So this is going to hit that. So we're going to mark that for death. He's going to hit both of these. So you can see he's going this way, and this way. And then this guy's got a ranged attack. So he's going to get eliminated. But again, it all happens simultaneously. So we've got the first one taking this out. This one's hitting that. This one's hitting that. So all of it's going to happen. But again, he's going to be able to pawn off his wound onto the Rune of Regeneration. So he's going to stay okay. He's going to kill the Rune of Regeneration with his range attack, and then these 2 are going to kill each other like so. So these are going to go away. So now we've resolved the initiative of 3. Now we're going to go and do all the 2s. I think there's only 1 2 out here, and that's this one. So that's the only guys these are going to hit. Is going to hit those. And then the 1s, which would be this guy, but he's netted, is going to be this guy. So he's going to go doo-doo, and he's going to hit that for 2. Let's just say we did that. We did the charge earlier. Now we hit it for 2. And then there's no other 1s out here. And then so all the 0s then will operate. And actually this one here would have gotten a double attack. What this did, so if this guy wasn't netted, he'd be able to shoot twice. What would happen is he would shoot on initiative 1, and then again on the next initiative lower, if they had, this is a special tile here that the dwarves had. So he'd be able to hit that twice and then do effectively 4 damage to it, because everything else had been cleared off in the earlier initiatives. And then he's going to tap back here, and then so that will do 1 damage to him, because remember, he's got a armor there. So we will resolve that attack. And then if you ever trigger an attack on your turn, that's the last thing that happens on your turn. So you kind of want to plan around that and the order that you play your tiles out and stuff like that. So again, you just keep going, and then so if somebody hits 0 or we play all the tiles. Now the interesting thing here about the monolith, let's just talk about that. I'll put a couple of tiles in here. So if I had a monolith here, what you do with the monolith, in lieu of playing tiles on your turn, is you can unfold the monolith here. And so what you do is you take the monolith up, or the base, and you leave that in the same spot, and then you can put these out in adjacent spots like so, or you could even do it like this if you wanted, and then orient them. Now if you have an empty spot, because these become just effectively normal tiles, so if something had killed this off and removed it, then on your turn, you're normally not allowed to play tiles when you do this, but you can actually play tiles in these empty spots here where you have the monolith. The other thing to know is if your monolith is netted, you can still do the unfold. Otherwise, it's effectively out, just like a normal net. And I should say after a battle is when you will fold this back up as well. But that's pretty much the game. Okay, so that is Monolith Arena. So it's obviously almost exactly like Neuroshima Hex, except for the Monolith special rule. What is the play time? I would say the play time, once you get into it, it's about a 30-minute game. Once you kind of know the different factions, and especially how to resolve the battles, which can be kind of a little bit confusing. Once you've done it a few times, though, it kind of moves along in a clip. And not every battle is going to be like the entire board. Sometimes you can have a lot of stuff going on and the board's completely full, and there's initiative modifiers all over the place, and so it can be a little bit complicated. But I would say it's definitely a learnable kind of thing where you can really get into it and move along quickly with it. And then, like I said, I played Neuroshima Hex with more than 2, but I haven't yet played this with more than 2. And this is really, for me, a 2-player game. And I'll kind of just jump right into more of a general review right now. And I think it's best with 2, because it's really best if you kind of know how the faction that you're playing matches up with the faction you're playing against. Because it's going to be very, very different. The factions are all very asymmetrical. They've all got little units that attack, and all of the order tiles and stuff are going to be completely different other than like move and attack. And then the runes, there's going to be some commonality, but there's going to be specialized runes for each of the factions. And they're going to really specialize in different things. Like the elf one has a bunch of ranged attack, and the humans are a bunch of, lots of shields and stuff, and or armor, and melee, and some very strong melee. And then like the demon has a bunch of teleporting stuff and shenanigans and moving around and kicking stuff off and putting the poison tokens on them. And what poison is if you hit something and it gets damage and you put poison on it, the next time there's an attack or battle, then it just activates the poison and does 1 damage to them. So that could just something could just be sitting there waiting to die. So you have to really approach the game differently. So if I'm playing the humans and I'm playing against the elves versus the demons, I'm gonna have to go about it in a different kind of way. Sometimes you play more defensively, more offensively. The tiles that you draw is going to sort of dictate how frisky you are in terms of how you play. So that's what I really like about it, though, because it's gonna reward multiple plays and present you with these different situations. Because this sounds silly, but not only do the tiles that I draw, not only is that going to be kind of different from game to game, the tiles my opponents are going to draw are going to vary from game to game. And you can know the deck that they're playing with because you can just look at their, cheat sheet and say, oh, okay, they've got these and you haven't drawn this tile yet, and that kind of stuff. And so that can make you it should make you really start to consider what you're going to do on your turn and how smart that is. And, because they're going to get to that tile unless you're whooping on them or they're whooping on you and they're going to kill you quick. They're going to eventually get to those special shenanigan tiles. And there's usually very few of them. It's not like there's a whole bunch of teleport in the demon. There's a few. And it's not like I showed you the net example of the humans. That's the only net that they get is that one. But it's cool because they can just throw a net, anywhere and just kind of lock that unit down. So you really have to, I can't stress enough, you've got to play the matchups a few different times, at least a couple, to kind of know how you can do it. Because you can just kind of be playing, and you can play let's say you figure out a way that you like to play, and you play this way, and then you play against an opponent who's going to do something kind of different. They might just wipe you all over the table, but then you've got to kind of learn and adapt and adjust. And all of that stuff is really baked into this game. And that's why it makes this, this is such a unique game. In terms of, it kind of feels like it could be a miniature skirmish game. It could be like a 2-player card game, battle game or something. It could kind of fit into those genre, but it's this tile laying game that is very methodical. And it feels like this may sound like a bad thing, but it feels like it's in slow motion. You're putting stuff out, but it's not. It's kind of a very tense preparatory kind of thing, and then bam, you get the outcome and the battle's just over in an instant. So it has this weird feel that I've just not seen in other games other than Hiroshima Hex, where I don't know, there's just something about the tactics of it that a lot of games, they feel very tactical. Let me try to phrase this right. So it's tactical. You do this, bam, I do that, bam, 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 bam. Where this can have some of that. Kind of that, take that. Okay, you did this, bam. Now he's dead. Dude, he's dead. Bam, he's dead. Dude, back and forth. This can have a little bit of that. Some of the special abilities, but a lot of it is I set this up here and it's okay, well, I could put a guy to block it. I could go and stress him out over on this side of the board and do this. So it's planning. It's plotting in a way. And then again, it unfolds. So that is just so different than a lot of games that are fighting games. So I definitely recommend this game. I think if you've got somebody else, like a spouse or a good friend or something that you can play this with a lot, you're going to get a ton out of just this base box. I mean, I guarantee you they're going to make expansions because there's a bunch of different factions for Hiroshima Hex. And I guarantee you that if you and I played human versus demon 5 times and then switched, we'd want to play it 5 times again, because there's just a lot of iteration and things that can happen, a lot of things that you're going to kind of learn about, okay, if I set up this kind of it's almost like little formations Or I've got, oh, this is my one range guy. He's awesome. And if I can kind of build a shield and like a flank or some like chaff, units in front of him to kind of protect that and get these runes in a certain way, and then know that they have their kind of bomb units that they like to play, and really kind of, strategically, but almost tactically, almost strategically in that vein, play that through over and over and over again. You're going to get a lot out of this game. So like I said, I don't know about with multiplayer, but if you can find somebody that's a dedicated partner to play this with, as a 2-player game, you're going to get a ton out of it. I know there's going to be expansions for it. The whole Monolith bit, which is a different bit from Neuroshima Hex, is interesting. It's like another layer of advancement on top of the basic game. So I would definitely suggest, if you've got this and you've not played Neuroshima Hex, don't use the Monolith like for a few games and really start to understand, what your faction does anyway. Because to me, it feels like it's very much the advanced game. So it's kind of weird because it mentions it as a rule, but it definitely stresses in the rule book, play the base game a few times and then throw in the Monolith. Because just knowing what units to put into the Monolith before you've drawn any tiles or you set up the game, that's something that, like, for me, honestly, I mean, I'm kind of a dummy, but it's like, what do I put in? I have no idea. I have no friggin' clue what to put in here. I mean, because, they come out adjacent and it's like, how do I get him next to this guy and all this stuff? So, what should I put around me? Who knows? It's really, there's got to be some other layer of strategy there. It's like a whole extra level of game with that Monolith that I think that's just going to give you even more to chew on beyond just playing the basic game. And I would just play the basic, basic quote unquote game, several times, like a dozen times. I could say you could never even use the Monolith here and still have like lots of, rewarding gameplay. But that Monolith is going to add that extra layer of planning and strategy and just kind of setting yourself up from a game plan before you even drawn a tile. All right, so Monolith Arena, definitely guarantee. I definitely guarantee that you should check it out, especially if you've got somebody you can do dedicated to 2-player games with, because that's where you're going to get the most out of the game. Playing it kind of casually here and there, I think it's still going to be fun. It's still fun. I haven't played it more than 3 times, and I played Neuroshima Hex. Well, I played Neuroshima Hex a lot, but I wouldn't say I played it a lot with a dedicated partner. Playing it casually is good, but I say you're going to get the most out of it if you can do dedicated. It's still going to be fun if you can kind of play it, here and there once a month or once every month, that kind of thing. But more than most games, this is going to really benefit from a dedicated partner you can go head to head with. Okay, there you go. Thanks.